Greetings, friends, and welcome to season 2 of Free Range Thinking. It's amazing that we've made it this far. This has started off being a project of just out of curiosity, and we said we would do it as long as it was fun. And hey, look here, it's still fun. We still have a great time hanging out together. And we would do this even if we weren't recording, so we might as well roll the tapes, and share it with you guys. So here we are again in our cozy recording caves, ready to dive into some interesting topics and rabbit holes. I'm Sharon Lee.
And I'm Alex Karl, and we deliver a delicious buffet of neurodivergent topics and discussions and questions, explorations around the subject of living as a neurodivergent human. And we are publishing 2 episodes a week right now. On Tuesday, you get this fresh one from 2023. And on the weekends, you get one of our episodes that we pre-recorded last year. So the second episodes will come in this consistent publishing rhythm as long as they last. And we love exploring.
As long as you can, as long as we can pretend that we're being consistent about anything.
Yes. Or we are getting consistent by habit, maybe. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, accidentally consistent. No, that would look great on a T-shirt. Accidentally consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fun, and as you said it, I mean, I was really struggling the whole year with getting in this rhythm, in this regular publishing rhythm, and now since 3 weeks in a row, it's working, and that makes me really happy, and that makes me feel really good, and I reduced a lot of friction that was holding me back. And everything I learned about that, I try to apply to other processes in my life now as well.
No. And we want you to be happy, Alex. We like that. And to finish the intro, like my consistency, is why we're here is because we enjoy talking about and celebrating how people like us can not only thrive in today's world, but prosper. Because the world desperately needs neurodivergent humans to bring real transformation and evolution to mankind. We are the keys through the shitstorm of a one-size-fits-all world, and that is no joke.
That is no joke, right?
Yes.
And today I brought a little question for Sharon. The first idea, as we said last week, was to talk about neurodiversity in the military. We have to reschedule that a bit because something this morning came up that, it was quite an epiphany, and it was quite serendipitous. So I thought, that's a really cool topic for an episode. So how I came to this question and to the idea, I will tell a little bit later. My question to you, Sharon, is about self-awareness and identity in some sorts, but also really practical. And I would like to add that I realized when I wrote about it this morning, and first I wrote about it in German and then in English, and then I realized that in German we don't really have a word for self-awareness. It runs under the umbrella of Selbstbewusstsein, but Selbstbewusstsein is one word which also means self-esteem, it means self-consciousness, it means self-confidence, and it means self-awareness. So maybe
the whole enchilada.
Languagely handicapped here about the expression self-awareness, but I try to fill it with life as good as possible for me. So the question I would like to ask you is, how would you help people to find out what they are naturally good at?
Good question. Yeah, that is kind of in my wheelhouse. It's what I do. Excuse me. Both of us are going to be coughing through this whole episode. We apologize. Or maybe we're not, because maybe he can edit it out. But it's
I
life.
don't
It's
think
nothing.
so.
Um, but we're trying not to cough all over your ears the whole time. But no, this is one of my main interests, and what is the most fun for me with clients is helping them find it and tap into it.
Mm.
Their the natural, the natural talents, the natural, I don't want to say passion, but although it can be, but the um, yeah, it's I'm always trying to help people like peel all the constructs of society and culture back and reconnect with our innate sense of being and our intrinsic motivators. And it depends greatly on our childhoods. Some people just have to go back and reconnect because of a culture, outside the culture. Community education has a lot to do with the educational culture, um, and there's quite a lot of people because of their family culture. There's a lot of conflict with self in that because it's been cultured out at home to not be a certain way. For example, say somebody wants to be, because little kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? Is generally what they say. What do you want to be? A doctor. So my mother was like, yeah, but how do you want to feel? I want to be happy when I grow up. That's kind of how it was in our house, which is completely different than most homes. And so, be a thing is always the message. And so sometimes how we want to be and what, the messages of what we want to be a thing, it's very conflicting. And so to go back and untangle that, it it it, it can be scary. It can be, there's a lot of work in there, the self-awareness, the working on self. And so whatever path somebody wants to take, and generally it's how painful is it in your life right now that you kind of like, okay, now's the time to go back and find out, what the core is. Because as long as we're in conflict with that, it's going to be a struggle. We're going to be struggling. Um, yeah. So that's Monday morning good news. No, I don't mean to bum everybody out, but there's I have quite a few friends in my orbit that and my wife struggles with this greatly. With how she was raised and the messages, and it totally conflicted with who she is. And she's like, God, how long is this gonna take? And I was like, as long as it needs to. I don't have an answer for you.
Mm.
And she really does the work, and it's not always pleasant. And she's very frustrated because of the back and forth. It feels like a lot of times like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 16 steps back. She's like, I already learned that lesson. Why is it happening again? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a therapist, but the, but the, excuse me, family dynamics, all this stuff plays into it. But a lot of it, and I just listened to, you can put this in the show notes, a podcast with, I can see her name, Glennan Doyle. And she was doing talking to somebody doing family dynamics. I think they call her Dr. Becky. And it was interesting in that Dr. Becky was saying that it can be one event that kind of makes tangles in a little kids, because everything in the basic assumptions that we set, and this is old knowledge that is from birth to 5 years old, but they said basically around 3 years old you're kind of done with your certain types of assumptions, and that it can be a one-time event, but more than that, it's like day-to-day things where a kid, because kids look for attention. How do they get attention? And if every time a parent is, saying, yeah, not right now, not right now, or if a kid knows that they can do something and get the attention, it's all training. We're all animals. It's all training. If anybody's had
Yeah.
dogs or cats, you know what I'm talking about. Other animals as well, but mostly, it's generally dogs and cats. But humans are no different. So whatever, they're talking about the attachment style. And so we carry that out through our entire lives, is our attachment style. This gets me loved, this gets me noticed.
Mhm.
And so this all is, wrapped up in our value, our self-value. And it's like, okay, if I'm the comedian, if I can make mommy laugh, that's where my value is.
Mhm.
And so this is tied into, what do I, if somebody's going to be creative, or if somebody's going to ends up being an engineer, they carry that stuff with them. So it's very complex. It's all, the whole system is complex. But if you know this about yourself, if you know what your attachment styles are, if you know where you struggle, if you know what you like, and you can see the conflicts, at least you have an awareness about it. And then you can navigate, or I don't say it's easier to navigate, because sometimes it's hell. but it's at least you're not in the dark about it, and thrashing around in the dark, to figure out what you want, and you at least have something to work towards. You can at least start moving towards that. And so, yeah, people go, I don't want to look in the past, I don't want to look at my childhood. I'm like, okay, you don't have to. Nobody is going to force anybody to do that. But it is the best way to start and figure out. But for those of us who are looking, for I include myself in there because I don't want to say you, but it's, everybody. It's easier for everybody to find out what they really like, and what they want to what they want to do in life, or where the focus of what we're naturally good at, if we know what the base, where we started. I know I'm making this very, very jumbled. There are a lot of other people that are much better at describing this than me, in terms of family dynamics and
Is it more about the family dynamics, or is it more along those what did you want to become when you are grown up question, or something of
well
both?
it's you can't separate them. This is the thing that I've noticed, because it's as little kids, the parents put projections on us. They project things on us. My mom was cool because she didn't.
Mm.
She just totally was able to stand back and see how we developed. And my father, and other family members, and teachers, and certain people, authority figures in our lives, would say, well, that's not, the things that you wanted to be, that we want to be, sometimes aren't supported. And in my life, my dad was always like, like, artist, what the hell are you talking about? And of course his opinion didn't matter that much to me. It didn't sway me, because I was already solid. I was just like, I just noticed, it's like, okay, he doesn't approve of that. Well,
Can be
he'll get over it. It's kind of how I thought.
It could be some kind of validation as well. If somebody
What
is
do you mean, that we're
against,
looking for validation?
no, if somebody is against what you want to be, then that could be validating for yourself.
Oh, sure. But that's where you're coming. You bring in the Luke Burgess wanting book. And so we're always, you know, there's also a negative, something that's negative. We're making choices because we don't want to be like that.
For example,
So
yeah.
we're always in relation to something, either going towards something or going away from something for whatever reason. Um,
But can you
and
hmm?
yeah. Mm.
Can you
Go ahead.
can you remember why you wanted to be an artist as a kid?
To be honest with you, I never wanted to be an artist because my mother didn't speak to us that way, and it was trying to think back on how to describe this. It's more like what interests you, what do you want to play with, what do you want to um, it's the languaging that people are now starting to use again, or I want to
Mm.
say use not again, but they're now starting to use it, whereas we grew up like that, and so it's it's not foreign to me. Um, you know, it's what interests you. What is very Montessori,
Mm.
very, you know. And we didn't go through Montessori school, but when I hear you talk about it, I'm like, God, that sounds exactly like what my mom did accidentally. And I know she knew about the Montessori, you know, teaching methods, um, but you know, at home, we were very much allowed to be fascinated and captivated is a good word
Mhm.
by our own interests. And so it teaches kids to trust in themselves. So you're saying that self-awareness and identity. I had to write these down because I had to keep pulling myself back to your question because it's hard for me to keep it simplified because I see it as being very complex. So the self-awareness and identity, you know, they're so connected, whereas a lot of times where I talk about the conflict, they tend to get separated um, a lot of times. And what we've been told we're good at. Like if parents say, you know, wow, you're really good at art, you know, or wow, you're really good at such and such. And then the little kids, because you've said, you've pointed something out and it's you've given them positive input, they want more of that, so they will continue to do that thing.
Mhm.
Is it natural and intrinsic in that kid? Hard to say.
Mm.
So it's very difficult because of course you want to encourage the kids, but are we in fact, you know, influencing them in a way that is not their natural state just because they want the affection and the you know, it feels good to have a parent say something like that. So you know, and as life is, you know, life is going on, so you can't have a, you know, perfect science family lab and say the right things at all the right times, you know, in every situation. That's completely unrealistic. But it's yeah, it's the kind of thing that how do you let a little kid grow up with a really super reinforced sense of identity, a true sense of identity. I don't want to say pure, but it's the um, untarnished, maybe the word, something like that.
What does that
That
mean?
it's like the trust in
Untarnished?
ourselves. Untarnished means it doesn't. You know how when you have like you leave a silver spoon in the humidity or out to be weathered and it gets oxidized.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's tarnished.
Ah,
And
okay.
then
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And then yeah, so but and yeah, so the thing is my mom would say stuff, you know, it's like, look, you know, look at this thing what I did. And instead of saying, wow, that's good or that's it, she would say, well, what do you think of it?
Mhm.
And so that teaches little kids to be taught us to critique our own work. And well, I think it's fantastic. Well, okay, all little kids think their shit is fantastic. You know, that's the natural state of being. But it's wild what happens when you reinforce that.
Mm.
Because then you come to a certain point where as you get older, you're like, well, I really like it, but I'm really working on this. I need to get this more in proportion because I was doing a lot of drawing, very, because my mom was doing illustration, so we had a lot of art supplies in the house. And so we're always drawing. And so I was really into drawing, like, our dogs and our cats and, the mice and the gerbils and the animals. And I could tell by looking at it that, the perspective wasn't quite right. This is okay. It's like, this isn't quite right now, but I would draw it and draw it and draw it over and over and over again. And so it's the repetition and the practice, but also I I felt safe to be vulnerable in that it wasn't done yet.
Mm.
It was a process.
Mm.
Instead of doing something and having it be, oh, that's good, that's perfect. She would say, how do you feel about it now? How do you feel about that one? And
That's
so it
some.
teaches you to trust yourself
Yeah.
as a little kid. So you don't need it extrinsically.
Yeah.
You're getting it from yourself intrinsically, which is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how she knew how to do that. I just don't. It just, the older I get, the more it blows my mind.
Maybe you
Yeah.
knew how to do it and she just let you do it.
No, no, no. I mean, how did she know how to just let us do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in the era that we got raised in, it was like, no, no, you tell kids what to do and how to be. Now, granted, that was the era that was a lot of alternative schooling and educational. The 60s and 70s were, it was a pretty fertile time for that. Um, uh, yeah. No, no, I feel really, really lucky. And so I think that, you know, I can share that. I can,
Mm.
I feel like I have not a responsibility. It's not that. Um, it's a desire to share
Mm.
you know, what she, what she gave us, what she, you know, gifted us, because it feels like a gift. Yeah. Because when you're little, you don't think anything of it. You don't think anything different. You think everybody does it like that.
Mm.
Um, um, but the sense of self, and it's not like I don't have self doubt. I just don't. I don't dwell there. Ooh, that was a good word that came across my orbit this week. Is in another conversation about where do you dwell. We can swing back around to that, but I really thought that was a cool question to ask.
When I was thinking back when you were just explaining that, um, I remember that I was thinking about what I wanted to do when I was little, uh, and how it developed. And as Steve Jobs always said, you can connect the dots only by looking back. And I always
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be. I mean, my childhood or my childhood idols were very very television inspired. So I wanted to be some kind of detective and some kind of
Mm-hmm.
MacGyver. So I always thought I will end up something like on the engineering or software developer side, but never did.
Mm-hmm.
Fun thing. Um, and what always fascinated me was, and it plays into this detective fascination as well, was everything regarding treasure hunting.
Oh, yes,
So I
yes.
was always on this. and the Ghostbuster, of course. But someday I realized, okay, there aren't no ghosts, so it's maybe not that.
Are there though? Are there? Aren't
Nah,
there?
at least not for me. They don't exist for me, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a good idea to make a career out of something that doesn't exist for yourself. But
Exactly,
the story
exactly.
that's told in there, the story of solving a mystery and solving puzzles and riddles and problems and finding cool stuff, that's something that always fascinated me. And in some kind of way, I made it my job.
Yeah, yeah.
In a really meta kind of way, and a digital and virtual kind of way. So I am looking for searching mental treasures or searching knowledge treasures or personal trying to solve like riddles or mysteries of being a human being.
Exactly.
But it's
Exactly.
still the same fascination. And I just realized it 2 or 3 minutes ago, so that makes me really happy that to see. Okay,
There you go. There
you
you go.
you
This
you still have something of this yeah, little kid inside of you.
I think this is one of the reasons why you and I get along really well is because you have that and probably a number of things from your childhood that are very in alignment
I
with
like
your
that.
adult self.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the curiosity around the puzzles of human nature, and what the hell are we doing all here,
Yeah.
and let's find out together. it's
Yeah.
it's fun, it's infectious. I can feel it. Yeah.
What I wrote down also when you were explaining was, what do you do when you find this part of your identity or this part of what you want to be, because that was some kind of my problem. Uh, but you don't get the usage or the value of that handed as well. Because when you say, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, then that's a somewhat clear career path. You have to do this, and then you have to do this, and then happens this, and then you have to do this. So, and for me, it was like, okay, after the 10th grade, I changed school to a business school, and I did my Abitur, my high school degree on a business school the last 3 years. So I had the education of the first 2 years of an MBA, you could say, or business economic studies in university. I had this in my last years of school. And then I wanted to do, instead of going to the Bundeswehr, the German army, I found myself a place as emergency, how's it called? A medic, as a paramedic
Yeah.
on an
Oh.
ambulance. But then I had to go to this assessment where they, some government guy checks how fit you are and what suits you in this governmental service. Back then, it was mandatory. Everybody, every man about 18 years had to go to the military back then, or do some kind of public service,
Social, yeah, public
social
service.
service. So that would be the paramedic service that I wanted to do. And they said, "Oh, congratulations, you are too short-sighted, so we don't have any use for you." And I said, "What? I already have my spot and I can start in like 3 months. And what are you telling me? And they say, oh, those who have to go don't want to, and those who want to go don't. We can't let to. And I said, well, why? And they said, okay, we can pass you through, we can let you through, but you are not going to be allowed to drive some kind of government vehicle, which you have to do as a paramedic. So you are not going to do this job. So do you want to be
Oh.
let through, or should we sort you out? And I said, yeah, fuck it, then sort me out. So that got me a little bit off track,
Oh.
and then I thought, okay, what would you want to do? And I was really into John Grisham novels back then, and I thought, okay, you did all this study in economics already, so let's do law. And I applied just for almost just for fun. I mean, I thought about maybe becoming a judge, but it was just an
Oh,
idea.
wow.
So I applied to study of law, and I was sure that it would take me like 2 or 3 years to get into university, because in Germany it's for those really traditional ways to study, you have to your high school degree has to be on a certain level. So for me, it would have been to be for studying law, it would have been 1.3. So that's really, really, really good. And mine was more 3.1.
Yeah.
But this year they just decided to, okay, we let everybody in. And so I
No
was
kidding.
sitting there in this lecture room with like 1,000 other people, because it was really crowded, because everybody got into the law studies. And I did it, I would say, for 1.5 years,
Oh,
half-assed.
wow.
But I
See, I
came.
learned something about you every time we do this. I love it. I think it's great.
The fun thing was that it was back in 1994. So in 1994, I got my first real internet access through studying at the university, so that I was able to get
Okay.
on the internet from home or from the computers in the university. And it took me, I don't know, it took me like 3 or 4 months to figure out, okay, you can make money from the internet, with the internet. You can work for people and help them. The first job I got in 1995 was for a city magazine here in Bielefeld, researching, and there we have the researching and the detective game again. They had a art and a concert calendar, no? Where all the concerts and exhibitions were on, that are going to be in the next 1 or 2 months. And my job was to research the links, and there was no Google back then, so I had to research the link or some information about the bands, and where you can find out more about the bands for this calendar. And it was really fun, and I met some really cool people, and I was invited to a lot of concerts through this. So that was really cool.
Which is phenomenal at that age.
With
That's a
18,
great
19,
gig.
yes, absolutely.
But yeah.
But it was really, really fun. And I learned back then, I learned, okay, what I want to do and what I really like. I mean, it took me still 10 years to figure it out and to put then together what I figured out. But um, what I defined as my identity, what I found out I really, really liked doing with and on the internet, I had to build it myself. There is nobody who says, here, you can do this now, and I pay you for the next 50 years, and you do this from 9 to 5, and then you're all good. So that wasn't the case. So I had to, and I I mean, I think we talked about this in our episodes from last year already, but I try to intentionally reinvent at least a part of myself, like every 1 or 2 years, just to stay on it and just to stay aware and awake of what is possible and not to be standing still in one place. And having
Right.
ADHD is for this regard, it's quite a benefit. And on the other hand, I think I am, or this is the way I roll because of the ADHD, I think. That I'm still looking at, okay, what could be the next thing? What could be interesting? How could you develop yourself?
I'm always curious, the conversations that I have in how people ended up where they are,
Mm,
and the amount of, I don't know if satisfaction is a way to describe it. How satisfied are they with their life as it is? But and I don't want to say happy, because that's a very loaded word. Happy. Am I happy? Uh, for most people, it's a yes or a no thing.
mm,
They don't see it as a journey and an up and down thing. And it's like, am I happy? They want it to permeate everything, as if they're never going to have a bad or unhappy time. And if they do, there's something wrong.
mm,
Um, but the general happiness or the general satisfaction of where we find ourselves. Um, and so I am fascinated by people who are fairly satisfied, and then it's like, okay, so I kind of study these people, not in a really restrictive way of studying, but and a lot of it is storytelling. The most of it is storytelling, and it's like, well, how did you get that way? How you know where did that come from?
mm.
And most of the time, I've found there's a rebellious factor
Oh, yes,
in there.
yes.
There's an against the grain of society factor, that the higher the level of kind of satisfaction, the more there's this sort of middle finger to society and the structure of how things should be. And it's like a letting go, being able to, the people who are most satisfied, or happy, if you will, are the ones who, again, have more of an intrinsic capability to intrinsically walk their own path.
Mm,
So, but not all of them are super self-aware about that. Some of them are just doing it. And this is what I find fascinating. So not everybody has to be self-aware to do that, but then it feels almost more accidental. It's like, okay, I noticed this in you. Um,
ah,
and some people, when I talk to them, they're surprised that I see that. This happened in a conversation recently. It's like, here's what I see. And so tell me what you think about, this, because I've noticed you in a particular community or whatever for a bit, and it's like, I've noticed that this about you, and it's not necessarily a pattern, but it's pretty consistent, and you tend to be. Is that wrong? Is that wrong? How far off am I with that reading? And number one, it's generally a surprise
mm,
that they are seen that way, um, but it's not far off the mark.
mhm,
And so some people say, oh yes, that's exactly, and here's why. So the self-awareness thing, they can explain why they're conscious of it. But there is that group of people that they're not really aware of it. It's almost accidental, and I find that fascinating, that they're just following their own path, you know by instinct, kind of. and then they've ended up in a certain space. Yeah, but the identity in that kind of situation, I want to say, I'm trying to think, I'm comparing in my head the people that I've met, see if it's consistent, but it's almost like their identity is very fluid almost. They're not these types of people, they don't have an iron grip
Mm.
on being something or being somebody, or that they did before and that they've let go of it.
Mm.
And of course, it has to do with certain levels of ego. And probably anybody who's done this studies are probably going, "Ugh, Sharon, that's such a that has to do with the ego or this or that." But it's I purposely don't talk about these things in from an academic point of view, because most people aren't going to study it from that point of view. So talking about it just in the most simplistic terms, so that we can all understand. But as if we have an iron grip from an ego standpoint on identity, that causes more suffering. I want to be a doctor because I want to be, because then we make decisions that aren't necessarily in our best self-interest of for our core, for our heart. We're making an extrinsic decision because of this identity. For example, people who want to be, rich or famous, or rich and famous, and you hear people from now, it's more and more and more. In the beginning, you didn't hear it so much because people were into it, being an influencer online. Now they come out and they're saying, people who were like really famous, and of course now they've got a lot of money, but they're famous for being famous, and being an influencer. And now they're going like, it is not cracked up. It's not what it's cracked up to be. They're saying that it's hollow.
Yeah.
Because they're doing it for that, and they're always on, and they're always filming, and they're always, and they no longer want to be this person that they built. So this type of thing. So it's like, who are we in our lives? Is it ego based?
And I could imagine that from? It's depending on the culture you grew up in as well. I mean, I literally only know it from what some YouTubers told about their life. For example, the Ali Abdal, this YouTuber who lives in England. I think his roots, his parents come from Pakistan, and he describes it. I can't recite it 100% right, but he made the conscious decision. Okay, what can I become in life? I can be a doctor, I can be a lawyer, or I can be an engineer. I like being in the university, so I choose the doctor because then I can stay as long as possible in university, and then end up with something to make my parents proud. Which was so deeply engraved into his cultural identity. And then through his experience, like, okay, he in school already, he started developing websites and little apps and so. So before he started becoming a doctor and starting as a medical student, he already was earning his own money as a developer, and then through his YouTube channel, while he was studying medicine, he turned into this career, that was much more him. and much more fulfilling, and teaching others about starting with teaching others how to study medicine in Oxford in an optimal way, and spreading from this into all this. Okay, this is how you can be more productive, and this is how you can live a more fulfilled life, and all that things and all that topics that he found for himself. But it all started from, okay, what choices do I have to study and to become in life that I can make my family proud, which I can't remember when that was a thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
have no idea if I ever if that was ever really a concern to me to make anyone in my family proud.
Were they though?
Mm, I think I don't know. I don't know. Never asked. Never cared.
What was your feeling though? As a kid, what was your feeling about how your parents?
As
She's
a
like, I'm
as
like,
a
no.
as a kid,
And
yeah.
now Sharon puts on the therapist hat.
As a
But
as
I
a
mean,
kid,
like, what was your general feeling of
as a
that
kid they were
approval
proud.
or
No,
disapproval?
as a kid they were
Okay.
proud because school was very easy for me, and
Okay.
they never had to pay for any teachers, extra teachers, or they didn't had to help me in any way. I was always I was always okay in school without trying too hard. I could have tried much harder. I learned that
Yeah.
later. I really learned that I thought, okay, would I have just put in 10% more work, because I did put in nothing, uh, then you would have had much more choices. But on the other hand, I am not regretting that because it's okay.
Right.
It was I'm totally fine with how it all turned out. Um, and I think back
But this
then,
is an area I have to bring this up.
mm,
Um, because of the DEI work that a number of my friends
mm,
are involved in, and of course you and I are in terms of the neurodivergence. It's kind of our swim lane, but and we're always talking about being aware of areas of privilege.
mm,
Now, okay, yes, both of us are Caucasian animals, and come from countries, westernized countries, where have fairly high amounts of security.
yes,
um I forget whether you said your parents were always stayed together. I had a number of levels. There's that wheel of security and privilege, which I was surprised when I did it, how outside of the norm I was. I thought, oh yeah, I have all this privilege, and then when I did the wheel, I was just like, oh wow, there. It's like, wow, that's really I have a huge number of outside the privilege, which I wasn't really aware of.
hmm,
But the fact that being a Caucasian animal in the Western society, coming from the America, Washington D.C. area, there's this um, and how my mom raised us. It's like we can make we can make our path um, as we want.
mm,
Not an entitlement. It wasn't that, but it's like and it's an amazing thing to give a girl child. It's like you can make your life as you want it. But the other part of a position of privilege is that I notice that you and I both come from a childhood and an early childhood of emotional security. And that's a huge head start in life because we didn't have to question whether we had value. And that is something that I want to say irreplaceable. You can't that's a big step up no matter what family, because I have friends that are from all walks of life in different countries, very international, and that's the one thing that allows us to navigate uncertainty, but it gives us a sense of identity and intrinsic identity that we're getting messages from the world contrary to what our value is, we can stand on that. Even if it's a tiny toehold, hanging on the rock face wall of life and hardship. There's something about that. But this is the thing that I try and share now is that okay, I had that. So how can I help others who struggle with that, and how can I help not reprogram, but re-anchor or anchor, because if you don't have it, you can't re-anchor it. Have the sense of identity and a sense of self value. But yeah, but if somebody, and I use my wife as an example, and it's something she struggles with, but it's the little things, the little daily things. Not saying, every day, you're so wonderful, you're so wonderful. I mean, I do that. Like, oh, look how cute you are this morning, because it's the little stuff, that saying, death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yes,
And
in German you would
that's
say,
in a negative way.
yeah, in German you would say, steter Tropfen höhlt den Stein. So always a little drop over thousands of years would make even the hardest stone hollow.
Right. So what is it on the opposite? What is 1,000 tiny little positive things that seem inconsequential?
Oh,
I
it's
haven't
like
heard of a saying like that,
it's
but what would we call that?
what I was immediately thinking of are those things in those caves that stalactites and stalagmites.
Stalactites and stalagmites.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I
Huh.
have to immediately have to think of, because those build, and if they are there long enough, then someday they connect in the middle.
So what is, hold on a second, death by, I'm writing this down, death by 1,000 paper cuts. So that's the relentlessness of negativity. So what, we have to come up with a metaphor for that, for the positive side, because this is what I try and do with Lydia, and in fact I don't try and do anything, it's just the way I am. And in fact, with Saskia, when we were first, because for those of you who don't know, we have a collaborative household here. So Saskia is part of the collaborative household, and she's from Munich, and she's not used to. She grew up with death by 1,000 paper cuts in her family, and and I'm not laughing at that. I'm not laughing at that. It's just the phrasing of it, and I know she would probably laugh. But the and so being around me, 24/7 in the beginning was fairly uncomfortable, because it's like compliments. It's like she was saying, it's like verbal acid when it drops on her. It's just like and she didn't take a compliment. It was hard for her to take a compliment, and she's getting better at it. She said it's still not comfortable, but it's. I mean, I can't not do it, because I do the same thing. I have the same style as my mother, and I tell people how wonderful they are, you know, and so I don't save it up. It's just like if I see somebody, if I catch somebody being, well, their normal selves, I notice and I'll say something. Um, and I do realize it makes quite a few people uncomfortable, and I've noticed that throughout my life, you know, and you know, but I won't stop. I can't stop. I just notice, it's like when you see something, you know, I don't know, anything in life that's pretty cool. Like, oh, look at that. That's cool. You know, I just point out cool things and wonderful things. It's just my nature. But I do notice that yeah, it's so yeah, we got to come up with a metaphor of that of how
I
to think
just
about that.
I just asked ChatGPT how it would rephrase it in a positive way.
Oh,
But it's
excellent.
but now it's really boring. It's like accomplishment through
Oh,
perseverance, or success through small steps,
yep.
or victory through persistence. That's not really poetic. I mean, it gets the point.
Ask him. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of whose voice you should ask it through. Ask it Yoda. Old Yoda. So, I feel like we should not necessarily apologize, but include everybody in our love of chat.
Achievement through small, consistent effort. Strong is the force of such perseverance. My Yoda impersonation is really crappy, but
I actually like it, especially the hee hee at the end of it.
yeah, I think we are coming up with something
We need,
when it
yeah,
relates to
we
this.
need that.
I
We need
just
that.
thought
I need it. Yeah.
I would like to tell you how I came, because something got even clearer while we were talking about it. I would like to tell you the story how this question came
Yes.
up tomorrow. so the WordPress app, it sends you a writing prompt every morning. And today it was like it was the fifth or sixth time that I realized that it's sending out those. And today I thought, I give it a try. So the prompt was: write about your first name, its meaning, its heritage, and so on. And my first thought was, okay, I go on Wikipedia and I find out about what the name Alexander means. And then it struck me like, why should I rewrite the 1001 article about the meaning of a name? so so I thought, I was still laying in bed. It was like 5:30 or 5:55 in the morning when I started that. And I thought, okay, I should tell the story of how I got this name. That might be more interesting. Which is, it's a little bit funny
The
because
story of how you got that name. Well, my parents were, you know.
yeah, right.
We
My
know
mom.
about the birds and the bees.
Yeah, but my mom was a great fan of Dr. Zhivago when I was born, or when she was pregnant with
Oh,
me. So
oh.
she wanted to call me Sasha from one character of the book and the movie. But then they played around and they thought, okay, Sasha Karl is too short and that would not sound that good. And so they looked for a longer name. And since Alexander is a long form of Sasha, that
Oh,
became my name. So, and I never liked
okay.
that name. The first
Oh,
30 years or so, yeah, the first 30 years I can remember, I was always called Kalle, which is the short form of my last name, or a nickname based on my last name. And if somebody would yell "Qua" somewhere, I would react on this as well, because this was like kind of my gaming ID for 10 years or so. And then my online identity since 15 years or so now is Probefahrer, because that was my blog about test driving cars. And when I was around 30 years, 30 years, a friend and colleague of mine, he started calling me Alex when we were around clients, because it sounded a little bit more serious than Kalle. He really didn't explain that, or he just started doing it, calling me Alex, and I thought, Alex Carl, oh, that sounds cool. I liked it. And so since 20 years or so, I call myself Alex now. A lot of people still call me Kalle, but most really old friend, especially from school or so, they are really irritated when somebody calls me Alex. They say, "Eh, that's Kalle, that's not Alex." And the funny thing is that I realized when I was writing it down that Alex is even shorter than Sasha.
That's what I was gonna say.
And the other fun thing about this whole Dr. Zhivago story was that my mom was always really fascinated and excited about all the landscape from the movie, and she always dreamed about visiting this Russian landscape one day, until I figured out the whole movie was shot in Spain. I said that all what you were looking at was Spain and not in Russia.
That is so funny. I did not know that. I didn't know it was filmed in Spain.
No,
That's so
I
funny.
always thought Canada. Somebody told me Canada, and I wanted to tell her, and then I thought, okay, I do research before I tell her. Not that I'm wrong, and it was wrong. So it was filmed in Spain, the most parts. And for me, the whole moral of the story is that you don't have what I made the moral of the story from this thinking about my name was, you don't have to be the person your parents want you to become. You can choose it for yourself, and you can invent it for yourself. I did it, especially all around the name and how I wanted to be called by others. I chose that, I think, in this instinctive way you described earlier on. I mean, the name is a part of the identity, and I chose this. I didn't choose how people call me, but I chose immediately when other people called me something else than Alexander. I chose that. I thought, okay, I want to be that, a part of my identity, and not that what my parents choose for me or chose for me.
And let me ask you a question. What's the connotation? What does the Alexander, what about the Alexander that doesn't seem to fit? What is that?
It's hard to tell. It sounds too, maybe for me, it in my ears, it just sounds too serious. Not me. I can't really tell why.
Because that's what's interesting is the parts of it, like what does it sound like to you that you want to reject? And then the other side of it, what do you like about the other one? What does it say? What are the connotations?
It's more. The only one I chose myself was the gaming name, the Qua, and that is, I chose that because it's even shorter, and it looked good when you write it in small letters, or not in capitals, but in the small letters. And I chose it back then because it's such a common Spanish and Latin word that as a name it provided a lot of privacy or anonymity. Back then I was really into, okay, don't want to it was kind of a sport not to be recognized and not to, that people can't find out who you are in the real life. And with the Alex, I switched that completely when I got into online marketing. Then I used the identity and I built the identity around what I want to be found as in Google, for example, or on websites. And the Alex is just much more playful, much more, sounds more adventurous.
Alex is a cool name. I like it because it can be used for either boys or girls.
Yes.
It's the one thing about my name, as I've gotten older, and then when I kind of realized sort of the non-binary thing, and in Sharon is just obviously a girl's name, and I've always which then explains a lot. Again, once you get older, you're like, you find stuff out about yourself and you're like, oh, that's why. Because even as a kid, I always liked kind of the gender neutral names like Chris. And I just, I wanted, when I was younger, I was like, oh, why can't I have a name like that? But I didn't understand why. Had no clue why. And then when I literally in the last 10 years, 7 or 10 years, it was 7 years, is when I really started going, oh, that's why. Because I didn't know that was a thing with me. I knew it was for other people, but I didn't really, realize it was a thing for me as well. And yeah, so the non-binary thing, and I always wanted the name Lee. I always wanted that as my first name. It used to be my middle name. Again, long story short, it's like when my parents got divorced, we took my mom's maiden name because she had her name changed, and then we did that legally. And then at one point, when I first started doing a lot of artwork, I thought, oh, okay, and I was doing clothing design, and I thought, I'll hyphenate the names, my mom's maiden name and my dad's, my birth name. And my mom was like, oh, hell no. And she never was that clear and direct about anything. So I had to honor it. And I didn't, it was in my early 20s and or actually late teens, early 20s. And my mom was like, oh, hell no. That is not going to happen. I won't have my name on the thing with it. And I was just like, what? Why? And then when she explained it to me, I was just like, oh, yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah, okay. I get it. And then, but there was a kind of a conflict between the two of them. My name. And I was like, okay, I'm not arguing with you guys. So I took my middle name as my last name and had it changed legally. So I no longer have a middle name. But I always wanted, and once I did that, I was like, I can never use my middle name as a first name because I did that.
But
and
I just have
and I really like that name.
So Lee, it was your second first
Middle
name.
Yes.
Your second first name, and you had like 2 last names one from your mom,
Well, not together. They weren't together. Like some people do. Some people, especially people, actors and actresses, because it's very important that they keep their name that they got famous with. And so you'll see a lot of hyphenated names when people get married. So a lot of kids will have like 4 names. They'll have their first name, middle name, and then the 2 parents' names on their name. So, but yeah, that was not possible with my the configuration of my parents.
Okay.
And so I was just like, no, I'm not gonna compete with the name game with the 2 of you. So I changed my name and took on Lee as my last name. And so that just completely cut out the argument. Yeah. It stopped the argument right there. And I mean, my mother wasn't really arguing. She just didn't want the hyphenated thing. And I was just like, anyway, so, but I always I love my middle name, which is now my last name. I've always really, really liked that name and related to that, but I can no longer use it as my first name because of doing that in my, I guess
Why
I was
not?
21, because it's now my last name. But I can't switch it back and go, what, Lee? And so, yeah, so, yeah, but I've never felt at home in my name, my first name, because it's a
Yeah.
girl's name.
Yeah.
But now I understand why. Now
Yeah.
I understand why, because it genders me, and
Yeah.
I'm just not comfortable with it. And I've never felt that way. I mean, I've always felt that way,
Hmm.
but I didn't know why. And it's
Hmm.
not like I hate my name. It's just that it doesn't
It doesn't
fit,
fit.
you
It's
know. So
uncomfortable when, yeah.
this is part of the identity thing, when we're talking about identity, um, that I find very interesting, because you can go through all of life and you can have kind of it's like a tag in your clothing. There's something that's a little bit uncomfortable, but you don't
Mm,
know what it is.
mm,
And it's surprising to me, it was surprising to me to be in, mid 50s, and then go, oh, huh. Look at that. Okay, that's a thing. And figure it out.
yeah.
And I'm a pretty self-aware animal, but that was just like such an amazing thing, um, to come into awareness about.
Mm,
Yeah. Because it's not so extreme that, because, some of my trans friends, it's very, very evident. But for me, it's not that. It's like I always say, I'm like such an edge walker. Everything is in the gray area. Everything about me is in the gray area. So it's hard to kind of define it. But because of the way I grew up, and that I was just allowed to be me,
mm,
and I just never really felt a need to be one or the other. It was always, you know, both and
mm,
kind of a thing. So I didn't really define a lot of stuff. And so it's interesting to find myself in a place at this stage in my life and be like, huh, look at that. Isn't that cool?
mhm,
And there's no trauma around it or anything. There's no really adjustment to it. The thing that did make me uncomfortable was when in the beginning of the pronoun usage, and it still kind of does, because and it's, people saying, what are your pronouns, what are your pronouns, and I'm like, I don't trust you enough to to tell you, depending on where I
oh,
am.
okay.
And so it's like forcing people, to out themselves,
Yeah.
and depending on the situation. I mean, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know these, certain people. I don't, you know
Hmm.
it doesn't mean I'm uncomfortable with myself, but
Mm,
it's like, I've navigated the world long enough, and I know how judgmental people are, and I just don't want to have certain conversations with people
mm,
that I don't want to have conversations with, if you want to say it that way. But then I finally, went on long enough that I finally like, yeah, I should probably put them in there. And I'm like, well, of course, I'm gonna do it my style. And
mm.
so on LinkedIn, I have it on, I have they, she, y'all. Because it's the only thing. It's the first thing that came up that felt like it fit, you
Mm,
know, y'all, and
mhm, mm, mm.
and I have yet to come across anybody that's used it, which I think is funny. I think it's funny that, that people will feel like they have to use it. Um, but that's the rebellious side of me. It's like, okay, I put it on there. Yeah, yeah, go ahead, use it. And let's see you put that in a sentence. It's my little way of, yeah, fucking with people, I guess. Um, and of course, if I'm amused, you know, that's what makes it worthwhile. And
It's interesting. I haven't thought about the whole pronoun thing for me yet. That makes it fun to think about it. But for me there was no necessity also yet. Yeah, I really have to think about. I mean, on the other hand, maybe you could make other people more comfortable when they know how to address you without making you uncomfortable. So on that side, might be it might be useful for both sides, but I can understand that, especially when people like rolling over you and asking you, okay, what that's the next big thing, and we have to ask everybody how their pronouns are. Never thought of it, that you might be uncomfortable with it to tell somebody.
Yeah, because if people are finding out about themselves and they literally don't know,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and I've had people say, well, just pick one. And I'm like, don't fucking tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that just to make you comfortable. Now, again, most people are pretty cool, but they're, then you get the reaction of, oh, sorry. And I'm just like, oh, Christ almighty, stop being so dramatic. I'm not, it's just, unless somebody's, completely cisgendered on one side or the other, unless somebody, when they say cisgender, it's like you're solid in where you are. But the people who are more fluid, you're just like, well, what time is it? I don't know. How can I put that in there and lock it in? Mm-hmm. This type of thing. There's no room or setup for the people who are more fluid. They say now it's like non-binary, but still, it's we're not there yet, but. So the adjustment period until society, and that's just in Western society in some countries, and and not even all countries, because you think it's that way in the United States all over, and it's some communities in some little pockets in some places they're comfortable and they can navigate that, and others not so much, and so we're in this completely uncharted territory of evolution in that respect. And so, so we have to be patient with the people who are learning about it, and patient, people, they have to be patient with us of like not wanting to participate or label ourselves and patience is the key word here, and and the observation and the just the graciousness, I want to say, gracious patience. Oh, in fact, so the opposite, or maybe the other side, maybe not the opposite, but the other side of death by 1,000 paper cuts could be life by 1,000 acts of gracious awareness, 1,000 acts of graciousness. I still have to
kindness. The first thing that came to my mind was kind.
Ooh, life by kindness.
Life by 1,000 acts of kindness.
Acts of kindness. Kindness, I like that. Oh, I like that. I think you might have nailed it. I think you might have gotten it there. Because I was going to go 1,000 acts of love, and I was like, It's like, no, too saccharine sweet. Well, yes, it's that, but it's just like, God, it's too Hallmark cardy for me. But I mean, it is that. And when it comes down to it.
And ChatGPT says, I think life by 1,000 acts of kindness is a positive and uplifting way to view the world. It emphasizes the power of small, everyday actions and to make a positive impact on others, and in turn, create a more compassionate and fulfilling life for oneself. It is a reminder that small acts of kindness can have a big impact on the world, and that one person can make a difference. There you have it.
There you go. Okay, we nailed it.
The mission.
Okay. Yes. So we got confirmation.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah. Well, ChatGPT says I made a good decision. It must be so. Yeah. Yep. All right then.
Great.
Well,
Alrighty.
we should end here because that was perfect. That was we came up with our life by 1,000 acts of kindness. You can't get it. Can't
get any better.
Can't get any better than that. But no. It's a good place to end on a very upbeat note there. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna go rush off and do a little piece of artwork and play with what that would look like on a t-shirt. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
And okay then. Then we see everybody next week.
And here next week, I would say. And then with even less cutting, I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be. Yeah, or it's my turn to cough.
No. You had your turn already.
I'm having a good day. It's not. I don't have the sinus thing. I'm not suffering today. So that's weird, and haven't taken anything or anything. So I've actually had 2 days in a row like this, which is like a record.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Cool.
But, cool. So thanks for joining us, all three of you that are listening.
Or four.
All four of you now, yes. Oh, we're building it. All four of you now.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Tell everyone, get your friends on here.
Bring your dog in the room. And
send this to everybody.
Yeah. No, say cool. It's cool. Done.
Yeah.
See you guys
until
later.
Next week.
And until next time. Have a great week.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.